You know, we always tell stories about people, but what about the things they built? Today, we're going to talk about an object, a furnace, actually, that sat right at the heart of the American frontier and, believe it or not, helped forge an entire nation.
If you stumbled across this today, you'd probably just see a pile of old rocks. But this is no ordinary ruin. This is the ghost of an industrial powerhouse. It saw war, it saw peace, and its story is literally baked into its stones. Okay, let's get into it.
So, to get what's going on here, we have to start with the tech itself, something called a bloomery. This was way before giant factories. Think of it as the original DIY iron kit for the frontier. You'd build this stone furnace, stuff it with iron ore and charcoal, and get it blazing hot. What you'd get out is this spongy blob of iron called a bloom, which you could then hammer into nails, tools, horseshoes, all the essential gear for building a new world. All right, so let's rewind. Let's go back to the very beginning to see how this simple forge was literally carved out of the Virginia backcountry.
So picture this. It's around 1770. A pioneer named Colonel John Donaldson and his son-in-law John Coffrey see these iron-rich hills in what we now call Franklin County, Virginia, and they see an opportunity. They build a simple forge and just call it the bloomery. But Donaldson, he was a man on the move. By 1779, he sells the whole operation to fund this incredible, dangerous journey to Tennessee, a trip that would eventually lead to the founding of Nashville.
And this is where we get a real kind of sobering look at who was actually building this thing. Old tax records from 1773 show us the crew. You had 4 white men. These were likely the experts, skilled guys brought in from established iron regions like Pennsylvania. And then you had 6 enslaved individuals. It's a stark reminder of the complicated and often brutal reality of labor on the frontier. Just look at this. This gives you a real feel for it, doesn't it? There's no automation here. This was an industry literally powered by fire, sweat, and just sheer physical strength. It took real skill to manage that heat and hammer raw iron into something useful. This was the back-breaking work that built a country, one piece of iron at a time. All right, so Donaldson heads west. But that is not the end of the story for our furnace, not by a long shot. In fact, things are about to get a whole lot more interesting. The furnace didn't just get new owners, it got a new mission. So in 1779, another father-son-in-law team, James Calloway and Jeremiah Early, buy the place. And they immediately make a statement. The bloomery is out. The Washington Iron Works is in. I mean, talk about a patriotic rebrand, right? Naming it after the general leading the fight for independence. And this wasn't just some symbolic gesture. The place became an absolute beast. Don't take my word for it. Thomas Jefferson himself wrote about it. Think about that for a second. One single furnace out in the hills was making a quarter of all the bar iron in the entire state of Virginia. That's just wild. And here's the bottom line. The Washington Iron Works became a critical engine for the American Revolution. It was turning out iron, making munitions for the Continental Army. It was basically a hidden arsenal, fueling the fight for independence from deep in the Virginia woods.
Okay, so the war is won. America is a new nation. And our furnace? Well, after helping win the war, it's about to enter its absolute glory days. It's going to go from a frontier forge to a true industrial giant. So how did it get so big? Well, it happened in a few key stages. First, a major tech upgrade. Out with the old bloomery, in with a much more powerful blast furnace. Then, new management. The Saunders family takes over around 1820. And that led to this massive expansion. It wasn't just a furnace anymore. It became what they called an iron plantation, a huge, self-sufficient industrial community. And the scale of the human effort here is just incredible. By its peak in the 1830s, you've got over 100 people working here. This was a whole town of miners, charcoal makers, teamsters, and furnace workers. And we see in the records from this time that it was a mix of free laborers and a large number of enslaved people. We even start to see names pop up, like Blacksmith Jim, which really brings the human story to life. And the output? Just as mind-blowing. We're talking 160 tons of high-quality iron every single year. And this wasn't just for the locals anymore. They were loading this stuff onto wagons and shipping it all over the South, reaching markets as far away as Alabama. But an engine that powerful needs a lot of fuel. And this furnace was hungry. To keep it fed with charcoal, the operation needed over 18,000 acres of forest. It was an industrial monster, literally eating the landscape around it to keep the fires burning.
For 80 years, this furnace burned bright, but its end wasn't a slow fizzle. Oh no, it was sudden, it was violent, and ironically, it was destroyed by the very things that gave it life: fire and water. So, let's set the scene. It's 1851. The furnace is roaring at full blast, running at maximum heat, turning ore into iron just like it had for decades. And then, disaster. A dam on the creek just uphill from the furnace. It breaks. A massive wall of cold water comes tearing down the valley, aimed right for the works. This is it, the fatal moment. You have this unstoppable wave of cold water colliding with the furnace's white-hot core. Two powerful opposing forces meeting in one catastrophic instant. The result was a massive thermal explosion. The rapid change in temperature cracked the granite structure from the inside out. And just like that, in a single, violent moment, the roaring heart of the Washington Iron Works was silenced forever. The explosion ended its reign. The fire went out. But the story, well, the story wasn't quite over. Its legacy was now etched in stone. If you go to Rocky Mount, Virginia today, you can still see what's left. It's a single, 30-foot granite tower. It's the massive outer shell that somehow survived the blast, standing there like a tombstone for a forgotten industrial giant. And what's really interesting is that even after the furnace was destroyed, the site wasn't totally dead. They never rebuilt the main furnace, but the mines that fed it kept operating for another 30 years, shipping ore all the way up to Pennsylvania, until they finally flooded and were abandoned. You know, this furnace wasn't just making iron, it was forging a nation. It armed a revolution, it built communities. Its story is a powerful reminder that history is all around us, not just in textbooks, but in the forgotten ruins hiding in plain sight. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other incredible stories are out there, just waiting for someone to notice them?